One of the battles that we had over the years was the discrimination against the homeless. It happened at both Airbnbs and hotels. The cheaper hotels would often kick people out that stayed more than a week or two, and the Airbnbs would often block out what was available to keep people from staying more than what was first purchased, so that they couldn't extend their stay or book again. It is heartbreaking how harsh and cold the world can be to those who don't have a home. During our journey, we met many families who didn't have a home for different reasons and lived in hotels. It is a place of bare survival when you are living in those kinds of places. You would be surprised by how many people live in hotels because they cannot get approved for a rental or home purchase. There are many reasons that can make getting a place difficult, like not having traditional income, having credit problems, or not being able to prove the consistency of income. That is why I was so thankful to God that He promised me a home, and He said that there would not be a credit check or requirements to pass. All I had to do was follow Him on this special path to get home. One of the ways that God often rescued us was by taking us to more expensive places. The more expensive places would never question it, and they always treated everyone with love and honor. We never had to worry about getting kicked out of the fancier places, and it was like we could breathe without the pressure of being hated for not having a home. For a moment, we were able to feel what it was like to live the way that God promised, and it was like sweet cold lemonade on a hot day. Those higher priced places assume that you deserve to be there. And they also assume that money or homelessness was not an issue. Very often the secret to our survival was that God would have us rise over the poverty places that were so cruel to those without permanent housing. God used the rise to stay in nicer places as a way to save us from being on the streets. It was also a way to learn to trust God and to expand by faith, because faith must be stretched and expanded in order to become what God promised us. We have to make room for the new by moving into that mindset of having that kind of life and being deserving of it as well. As a royal child of God, many times, the stretching was far beyond what I thought I could handle. And it was actually painful to spend money because I had fears and idols rooted in lack and the poverty and the fear of spending money. Not only was God using the rise into an abundance mindset to rescue us, but He was using it to change our life, because whatever decision you make is either going to be one rooted in fear or rooted in faith. Choose faith, because God has a reason for it. Every time we stayed at a cheap hotel or low-price Airbnb, it wasn't long until God had to lift us up into a more costly place in order to protect us from being thrown out. God knows the enemy's thoughts and plans. There is a reason for everything He asks of us. The secret of the rise is also part of entering into what God has promised in the end. I have to become the person that He promised through the journey inside first, by changing every single thought and decision to match the abundance of His promise, and not the fear-rooted beliefs of poverty and lack. Anything is possible with God as long as you are in obedience and following His ways. He can do and will do far above and beyond what seems possible to you. As I follow God along this path that He has made for us on the way to our promised home, I can rest in knowing that God has each step protected. Even when there are sudden bumps in the road, God will lift us over them. God uses the rise as a way to protect us from low-level dangers below. There are some places where attacks cannot reach us, like when we follow God by faith and fly up like a butterfly above the trees. Sometimes it requires a huge leap of faith. Whatever God is leading you to do or pay in your journey, trust Him and obey. As long as you are doing what He has asked you to do, you will be covered and protected with His riches. Where God guides, He provides. But it often requires doing things that do not make sense or seem logical to do. There is a reason for every single decision and choice that God has us make. He can see the hidden traps along the path and where the snakes and alligators hide. God also needs to test our faith to see if we believe His promises over what makes sense in our minds. I have failed this test so many times, even recently. Yet each day is a new day to begin again. But when I have passed, it is like a dream. I had to pinch myself because I simply could not believe what God did to save us and wrap us in His extra generous and tender love. Trust the steps that God asks you to take, especially the ones that are the hardest to take. It's all part of the process of becoming the dream that He has planted within, and the promise that is forming inside to be born is a new life. You are being raised up for such a time as this, and you're going to love it. The view will be breathtaking, I just know it.